So we are going to go rather quickly through this section. We have covered Visum interface in much detail and in few previous trainings. If you want, you can go back to D1 and D7 trainings, and you can find all the material for those trainings on the Technical Resource Hub. We have recordings and training material available there, so you can go and the Visum interface is covered in much detail in those trainings. But we do have a lot of material to cover in this training, so I'll try to go rather quickly through Visum interface overview. But we would still go through all the important elements that you need to know, just to refresh your memory and in the interest of people who are not so familiar with the Visum interface. Okay, so for this, first you would want to open the Visum version file, and there are multiple ways to open the Visum version file, but the easiest is you can simply right-click on the file, and you would see a window pop up like this. And before you even start with opening the Visum version file, make sure that you have installed the latest version of Visum. So this model requires the latest version of Visum. So even if you had installed the Visum 2022 at the beginning of this year, you might still need to update if a service pack was released. Then make sure that you're up to date with all the versions, because some of the reporting functions in this model requires the latest version of Visum. So assuming you have the latest version of Visum, you can simply right-click on this file. And then in my case, I had multiple versions of Visum on my machine. So Windows sort of gives you an option to choose the version. So go with the latest version of Visum. And once you click on that, a screen will open, and you would see this progress window sort of a display where it would show that it is reading various network objects. So if you come to this, that means everything is working fine. Another way to open a version file is you can simply go to the Start menu and simply start Visum, start the latest version of Visum, and then you can simply drag and drop this version file onto the Visum window that opened, and that would also open the version file for you. So there are two ways to go about this. Okay, and if you're successful in opening the Visum version file, this is what typically you would see. The typical interface where you would see this map for NERPMAB, and then there are a few other windows or panels, and then menu items and all of that. So we'll go through all of these various elements of this interface just to understand what's the purpose of each, and where to look for specific things in Visum. Okay, so first thing that you would notice in this interface is the menu bar, which has a lot of menus. There's a file, edit, view, lists. So that's the menu bar, and you'll go to this menu bar to if you are want to do a specific task, and each menu items have specific features and items and operations that you can access. So the menu bar is something that you would use quite frequently when you're working with Visum. And then there is also a quick access toolbar. So some of the things, some of the operations or features we end up using quite frequently. And so those features are provided as quick access icons on this toolbar. But you can, everything that's there on a quick access toolbar, you can access them via menu items as well. And then you would notice these windows, there are different windows, and these are called panels. There are typically there are 4 panels that are open during a Visum session. So you have a network editor panel, and then there is a network panel, and then there is a quick view panel, and there is also a messages panel or messages window. And it's all very flexible. You can have more panels open, or you can close one of them. You can rearrange them. So we'll go through some of that as we keep going and look at different things. We'll come across how to arrange panels, or how to close or open one of the panels. Okay, so now let's quickly go through the menu items, so that we have a good idea of where to look for various options and features in the interface. So in the file menu, you have the options to open files, open any sort of the different file extensions that we looked at earlier. So you can open different files. You can open a version file, or various kinds of files. So if you want to open any file, this is where you would come. And then there's also option to save files, and it's always advised whenever you're working with Visum to keep saving your work. Don't wait till the end, but keep saving your work as you go. There is in the file menu, there is this option called compare and transfer networks. So especially when you're working with scenarios, if you're working with a build scenario or forecast scenario, there will be times where you want to compare your build network to the base network and see what has been changed, or what's different between those two networks. So Visum provides a very nice feature to compare networks and create transfer files to sort of transfer those changes to another network. And then there is also scenario management, and we are not going to cover scenario management in a lot of detail, but this was covered in much detail in D1 training. So if you're more interested to learn about scenario management using Visum, you can go back and refer to D1 training materials to learn more about scenario management. But the scenario management in Visum, it's very powerful, especially if you're someone whose job is to create and run scenarios. You should definitely go check it out. Okay, and then there are options to import data from from cloud or from various other third-party sources. So you can find those options here. And then again, for exporting data, exporting data in different formats. So for example, if you want to export your polygons as a shape file, then you would come here and for any other, if you want to export schemes or any other network objects, you can always come to file and then the export menu item. Okay, so this is one of the important menu item, project directories. So it is always, it's recommended that whenever you start working with Visum, the first thing that you should do is set a project directory. So project directory sort of set the root directories for all Visum operations. So in Visum, you can there could be you may define paths for various purposes, and if you define project directories, then your paths start from wherever you define your project directory. So that sort of becomes a root directory for various purposes. And for different things, you can define different project directories. And we will come to this when we talk about running the NERPMAB model and how you go about this. Okay. So the next menu item is edit and view. In edit, it's more about user preferences, dealing with defining hardware and interface specifications. View menu is where you can sort of configure the GUI, customize panels, views, and if you want to change the layout in any way, and then this is where you would come and update, um, access one of these features. Uh, Lists is another menu. So if you would remember, we talked about list layouts, and in the list layout, so in Visum, every network object has some data associated with it, and the way to access that data is through lists. So if in this menu item, you can access list for any network object in Visum. So for example, here we are showing if you go to network, you can access the list for zones. So it would, when you click on that, it would open the zones list where you can see all the zone level attributes. Both what the attributes that are there in Visum, such as zone ID and type number, and then user defined attributes such as that could be county, or that could be land use data, etc. So that is how you would access in any data associated with any of the network objects in Visum. Now, in the same list menu, there is also an option for by the name user-defined tables. So that there could be a lot of data that is not necessarily associated with any network object, but it uh, still is in tabular format. So that sort of data can be stored in what are called as user-defined tables. So in this example, you see that the DSIM configuration file is being stored as a user-defined tables, but there could be a lot of other use cases for this. So you might have some miscellaneous data, the speed capacity lookup, or friction factors, or anything like that, which could be stored in a tabular format. You could use a user-defined table to store that data. So the main advantage of this is if you store all your settings and all the miscellaneous data using user-defined table, then all model inputs are sort of in one place. Everything is inside Visum. So Visum sort of becomes a one-stop shop for all data inputs and everything, all modeling tasks. So those are user-defined tables, and these have been used extensively in NERPMAB. So we will go through some of these later on. But this was just to give you an idea about what user-defined tables are. And then there is the calculate menu. So in calculate menu, you can access the underlying methods, and you can configure and define them. And the main menu item that you would deal with in this menu is the procedure sequence. And as I mentioned before, procedure sequence in Visum provides a framework for you to define calculations and operations, and in what sequence they should happen. So right now on the screen, you would see an example that this is the NERPMAB procedure sequence, and there are various operations, initializing network, doing skimming, demand generation, and then assignment, and so on. So this is sort of the heart of the model, or this if you want to see the design of this model, or of any Visum model, then procedure sequence is where you should go, and it would show you the exact steps and the sequence of those steps. So if you want to understand a model, go to calculate and then go to procedure sequence, and it would load the procedure sequence. And once you're happy with your procedure sequence, you can always save it, and you can also there's a open file button there on the procedure sequence window, and you can load a pre-saved procedure sequence as well. And just below procedure sequence is the general procedure settings menu item. So here are various settings for the model, assignment settings or settings for skimming, impedance. You can define your link VDF functions. So we'll look at this in a little bit more detail later on. But if you want to find assignment settings or impedance settings or skimming for both highway and transit, this is where you should go to general procedure settings, and you'll find all those settings here. Okay, moving on, there are the next menu item is the graphics menu item, and here you will find all how to configure visual settings for different network objects. And from this menu item, you get access to settings for all network objects. So, if you want to control how to display nodes on your network, or how to display links, or if you want to select a specific color scheme for zones, and so on, this is the feature that you would come to edit graphic parameters, and it would give you access to all these settings. And then there are also various other visual features or operations that this menu item gives you access to. Flow bundles are if you want to perform a select link analysis, or you want to draw isochrones, or do a shortest path search. So you can access all those operations from this the graphics menu item. Okay, and the next menu item is network, and this provides access to all the background settings that are not associated with any specific network object. So these are like general network settings that you would deal with. Things like the direction of traffic, the units, and projection system. And another feature that this menu gives you access to are user-defined attributes. So we talked about user-defined tables. Those are for storing, tabular format data. But there might be a lot of other, attributes that you might create for specific objects. So for nodes and for links, you might want to create a lot of objects which are not, available by default in Visum. So you can come to this menu item and create those user-defined attributes. So these would be right now, I think on the screen you see a lot of example user-defined attributes, and you see these for the nodes network object, and this could be things like what's the county that node is in, and fare zone, and things like that. And for some of these attributes, you would see there is a prefix to the attribute ID with IMPT underscore. So this stands for imported, and this is just to because a lot of these attributes were imported from previous models. So this is just to differentiate the attributes that were imported from previous models versus anything that was created specifically for a Visum implementation. Okay, so that's what various other things are available, and we are not going to go through all of these in a lot of detail, but the network menu also gives you access to things such as PUT operators. So these are not necessarily, you would not find these associated with a specific network object, but let's say you can define your public transit operators here, and if you want to create a fare system for each operator, then you can come here and do that. All right, so the next menu item that we're going to look at is the demand menu. And once you have everything in place, all your network objects are in place, you can come to the demand menu to define your demand strata. And if you want to set up various models and methods to use in assignment and things like that, this is where you would come. And the most frequently used menu item here would be the transport system, modes, and demand segments. So in Visum, you define transport systems, and then they get combined to modes, and then modes get combined to demand segments. So to define all of that, this is the menu item that you would use. Come to demand, and then go to transport systems, modes, and demand segments. So yeah, I talked about how modes get combined into demand segments, and then once you have the demand segments defined, you associate those demand segments with a matrix, which is sort of which would store the demand for each the origin to destination demand for each demand segment, and then you can also define a time series if you have a time series in your model. Okay, so the next menu item is the scripts menu item. And here, this gives you access to where you can, run external scripts and various add-on modules that you can utilize for various purposes. So this gives you access to, if you want to import network from other software such as Cube, then you can come here and access that. But this also gives you access to the Python console. So Visum, as I mentioned earlier, has a very powerful Python API, and you can either run Python scripts, or you can open Python console and run Python commands interactively. So if you want to quickly access all the zone objects and do some operation on them, you can quickly open Python console and do that. Or if you want to look at data in a specific way and summarize them using Python, you can use all of that. And this, of course, requires some knowledge of Python. You should know Python, and also should have some knowledge about how Python API or how to access various Visum network objects using Python. And Python console, it does include some of the frequently used Python packages such as pandas, NumPy, and SciPy and Matplotlib. So you can make use of all those packages and do a very specific analysis that you're interested in. Okay, and I think this last menu item, which is the help menu. So you're not able to find what you're looking for, or if you're stuck, this is where you would go, and this gives you access to a lot of additional resources, such as very detailed tutorials. It gives you access to FAQ section, and there's both a PDF version of the tutorial or the user guide, or you can go online, which makes it easier to search through the user guide. And then this is also linked to technical support. If you want to reach out to the support team, you can come to this menu item and then go from there. Okay, so I think that was the the overall overview of Visum interface. So let me go to the version file here real quick, and we'll just walk through some of the things that we talked about just now. So this is when you open a Visum version file, this is what you would see. There are you see three different panels here. There's a network panel, there is a quick view panel, there's a network editor panel, and then there are different menu items here that we looked at. This is the quick access toolbar. And if you come to the network panel here, and you would see that there are these small boxes on the left side, and some of these boxes have a white background while others are grayed out. So what that means is whenever a box is in white, it means that layer is on. So the model structure in Visum, it follows a layered structure. You have each network object is in its own layer. So nodes are in a separate layer, links are in a separate layer, and the hierarchy here is sort of it's more natural or in alignment with how you would go about developing a new model. You start with nodes, and then you create links over them, and then you add turns, and then you include zones and connectors and so on. But again, coming back to these white boxes, so right now, if I show you the network here, let's say if I switch this off, if I just simply click on that, it grays out. So it switched off the zone layer. So you can switch on multiple layers at the same time, and you can configure visual settings to make them transparent enough to see multiple layers at the same time. But that's a basic functionality. You can switch off or switch on layers. I can switch. I just switched off the links. I can switch on the nodes and so on. And when you come to the right hand side, you see that the nodes are currently, they have a white background, and all the other network objects are grayed out. So what this means is whichever layer is in white, it means that is the active layer in the network editor window. So if you have this edit mode pointer selected, then if you click on the network editor, then it would give you access to whichever layer is activated right now. So right now, since the nodes are activated, so if I click anywhere, I'm clicking on some nodes. And to navigate through this map, if you want to avoid accidentally editing any of the network objects, it's always safer to work with this, pan, go to the pan mode, where you can easily move the map without worrying about accidentally making changes to the network. Alternatively, you can, if you have a scroll button on your mouse, you can simply click the scroll button, and it would give you the same the pan option to move the map. Okay, so let's look at the link. Let's activate the link layer now. So now, instead of when I move my mouse, instead of activating the nodes, now it's activating links for me. And if I click on any of the link, this window here, which is a quick view window, it would give me a quick snapshot of various attributes for the link that I clicked on. And you can always, if you want to look at more variables, you can always, there's this attribute selection icon here, which is just a box with a screwdriver. If you just click on that, it would open up the attribute selection window, where you can select different attributes. And first you have all the attributes that are comes by default with Visum. And slowly, if you keep scrolling down, you would reach um, these attributes with a, I think there's a gray person sitting there, and that basically signifies that this is a user-defined attribute. So to include a user-defined attribute in your quick view, either you can just click on that, and then you can use the green arrow here to include it in the quick view window, or you can simply double click. That also would include it in the the quick view window. So that is how you can add um various attributes that you want to look at into the quick view window. And if you simply double click on any of the network object here, assuming that you are in the edit mode using this pointer, it opens this edit link, and you can look at various other attributes in detail. So we'll go through this a little bit uh, in more detail and when we talk about the actual model structure. But this is just to get you familiar with the Visum interface itself. And we talked about the list menu, where you can you look at attributes or data associated with any network object. So let's say if you want to look at the link attributes, you can click on this, and it would open the link list, and it has a lot of attributes. But if you want to look at only a subset of these attributes, you can go here to that attribute selection window, and you can select or deselect variables that you do not want displayed. And once you are satisfied with that, you can save that layout, or you can open a new layout if you want. Another way to access lists is if you go to list and you're not sure where to find the network object, you can simply click on the network object here in this network panel. Just right click on it, and it would give you this option of list, and you can click on that, and it would again open the list for you. All right, so that's pretty much about the interface, and I think this is good enough to get you started. If you want to zoom to a specific portion of the network, you can use this zoom feature, and it would zoom you to that specific network portion. If you want to arrange the layout in any way, so let's say I have two windows here, so I can arrange these panels vertically here using this quick access menu, and it would arrange these panels vertically. And if you want it to be do very interactive editing, if you click on any of the data point here in the list, it would highlight that link for you in the network editor. So that this feature comes in very handy, especially when you're doing a lot of network editing. But this is just to give you an idea about how to get your way around this whole interface. Again, if you're more interested in learning about the interface, you can always go back to the training materials from the previous trainings, where we covered this in much more detail. So you can go back to those, refer to those trainings if you want to learn more.